Blog Talk Radio.
Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen, across the board. It's Tuesday. It's a throwdown. It's the American Sports History Podcast, live from Cleveland, Ohio, hosted by my good friend, a brother, a mentor, Peter Ray. Yours truly, Mark Mancini, producing it in Los Angeles, 347-205-9631. It goes by quick. Catch the archive on blogtalkradio.com/Mancini Sports, podcast platforms, wherever you subscribe to, powered now by Mancini Media. So without further ado, as I lay down the red carpet, put the podium in its place, hand off the mic, first of all, Peter, how are you? Second of all, how can people get a hold of you? Third of all, every 2 weeks, everybody seems to be looking forward to this show, you and James Donaldson.
Hi, Mark. I'm doing well. I have a YouTube channel. It's my name, Peter J. Ray, R-E-A. You're absolutely right. Tonight's guest, for the 17th time, he played in the NBA from 1980 to 1995 with the Seattle Supersonics, San Diego Clippers, L.A. Clippers, Dallas Mavericks, New York Knicks, and Utah Jazz. He's the author of 2 books, Standing Above the Crowd and Celebrating Your Gift of Life, From the Verge of Suicide to a Life of Purpose and Joy. And he has a podcast on the Mark Mancini Network now on Saturday morning, 10 o'clock Pacific time. And I'm honored that I was, but I'm in the middle of Craig Elo and Jack Sikma in his guest list. Welcome to the show, Mr. James Donaldson.
Hey, Peter, you got me cracking up over here. So thank you so much. Hey, it's always a pleasure and honor to be on your show every couple of weeks. I think our listening audience loves the rapport that we have, the back and forth banter, and just really talking about things that are really interesting and important in life. We talk a little sports too, of course, but there's a lot of other things going on. And that's what really makes our little show special. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, I really love it myself. Now, continuing with your book, Celebrating Your Gift of Life, From the Verge of Suicide to a Life of Purpose and Joy. We're in chapter 13, in the middle of the chapter. I feel like my life is very much back on track. I've regained a sense of purpose I had totally lost or felt I had totally lost. As you can see from the list above, I have a lot of stressors. Typically, a person can handle only 1 or 2 of those things at a time. So when your cup runneth over like mine did, it really becomes too much to bear. I'm so glad I'm alive to enjoy life. I can't say it more plainly than that. Sure, some days I'm tired physically, mentally, and emotionally, but when those days hit me, I remind myself just to take a step back, remember what I've gone through, and realize no matter what lies ahead, it's not the end of the world until it actually is the end of the world. When I was going through my very impulsive stage, simple little things like having my cell phone service cut off were enough to send me over the edge. Now I look back at it and realize even though I had to go 3 days without a cell phone, that was really trivial and not the insurmountable problem it seemed like at the time. Now I'm working on saving my home from foreclosure. I worked with my mortgage company through 2019. They suggested we try to do a loan modification, but because I'm unemployed, have health issues, have huge medical bills, and my monthly NBA pension is barely enough to pay my mortgage, we're kind of at an impasse. I reached out to some friends who would like to buy the home out of foreclosure if the mortgage company allows that, and then possibly rent it back to me, so I can at least stay here for the time being. I'm hoping that will happen, but for now my home is in pre-foreclosure and in front of a foreclosure attorney for review.
Yeah, I tell you, Peter, that was a really harrowing time to go through. For all the listeners out there, I ended up losing my home after all through foreclosure and a short sale, and it just was horrible. I was given a couple of weeks to pack up and move out and find another place to move to. And I'm sure a lot of listeners out there know how difficult it is to try to rent an apartment if you have a bankruptcy on your rental application. It's just an automatic red flag. So I went through 30 or 40 different apartment properties in Seattle just trying to find one that would okay that for me and help me out a little bit. And I finally did find one after about 30 of them or so. But I lost my beautiful home. I was there for 40 years. I bought that home way back when I was a Seattle Supersonic in 1981. and lived there ever since, and just loved it. Beautiful neighborhood, beautiful home. But, like we mentioned in the opening there, life isn't over until it actually is over. And this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, a month that we should be celebrating life and celebrating mental health awareness. But instead, every couple of days, we're hearing about another high-profile person who takes their life, who commits suicide. Naomi Judd, just a week or so ago, half a dozen NCAA athletes, student athletes. It's just terrible. And each time it just guts me so, because I realize that if they just hung on a little bit longer, they would have saw themselves through that difficult time and still be here to enjoy and cherish life every day like I do. And that's my hope for everybody out there. Just keep on hanging in there. And when it gets to be the bleakest and darkest of time, there still is hope. You just have to make your way through it as best you can.
Deborah from Birmingham, Alabama. Guys, your show gets better and better every 2 weeks. We had 14 killings on Mother's Day across the country. If they only heard a show like this, through God, they could be saved.
Absolutely, Deborah. Thank you so much for that. And and now we have so much political strife in this country as well. This whole Supreme Court leak of a draft of the Roe versus Wade, pro-life versus pro-choice. I mean, if people really understood the value of life and how precious and cherished it should be, we would have a different narrative in this country. But so many of us don't. So many of us don't understand that life is the most precious gift that we have. And to take it, even from an unborn child, and I don't mean to get political or preachy or anything, but to take it from an unborn child who doesn't even have a chance to come into this world and try to make a difference is just a tragedy. So I hope we wake up. I hope that we can find a way to come together and to continue making this country, the greatest place on earth, and and enjoy the beautiful privileges that we all do have.
Yolanda from Goleta, California. You're better now, James. Higher power blazing a trail for you. Peter and you are breathtaking.
Wow, thanks so much, Yolanda. And each couple of weeks, this really gets my emotions stirred up because, Peter's reading excerpts from my book, and this is a couple of years ago. The book came out last year, actually, but I've been working on it for a couple of years, and it really stirs up a lot of those emotions that I had went through back in those times. And, but I'm glad it stirs it up because it reminds me of just how real that time was and how difficult it was. And I look out over the landscape now, and I know there are, tens of thousands of people every single day in this country that are really, really suffering, really at the point of taking their lives or wanting their life to end. And we hope, Peter and I hope, that our message continues to get out there to each and every one of you to just keep hanging in there. There are a lot of great resources. Matter of fact, I'm starting up another little podcast here soon where I want it to be a safe place for men especially. Men don't get enough coverage, enough support when they go through mental challenges. But for men to come on board, to talk to me for a half an hour about what they're going through, some very difficulties, and some of the efforts that they're making to overcome that. And Peter, I'd love for you to be one of my first guests when I put that together.
Oh, I'd love to be your guest there. Carlos from West Palm Beach, Florida. Miami Heat taking the title. Any thoughts, fellas?
Well, this is a different playoff this time around. Without the heavyweights in there, the LA Lakers, the Brooklyn Nets, a lot of other teams are now getting a chance to shine. Of course, Milwaukee won it last year. They're in the running again to do it again. And so it's just great to watch the playoffs this time around because any team can emerge from the pack and be on top at the end. Miami has as great a shot as anybody out in the East, but Philly's out there playing well still. And out here in the West, Golden State and Phoenix and there's so many good teams. Dallas. I've been just watching it in awe and just saying, wow, this is going to be a really interesting race to the finals.
Yeah, I think it's impressive that Eric Spoelstra is still the coach in Miami after the end of the LeBron era there, and got to give credit to Pat Riley and for the stability in the organization. And then now they got this really good team that I to be honest, I don't really know much about. Jill from Mesa, Arizona. Well said, James. When you take God out of the equation, everything falls apart. Ditto to what Deborah said. Keep up the great work. I listen to a lot of shows. This is definitely in my top 3.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and like I said, I don't want to get overly preachy. I mean, I'm a faith-filled man. I'm a strong Christian man. Church every Sunday, reading my scriptures and Bibles every day. That's how I live my life. But I don't try to push that on anybody else. I share with other people what I do and what works for me, and hopefully they can pick up some little nuggets here and there and implement them into their lives. But when you look at our country as a whole, that's really what's missing. When we took God out of the equation, there's an old saying: when we took the lamb out of school, out of public schools, no longer able to talk about Christianity or any other religion in public schools, that really, I think, was the beginning of our downturn and something that we're still battling with now.
Randy from Charlotte, North Carolina. That guy in Miami must be smoking something. James, I heard you with Jack Sikma last Saturday and Peter with Karen Azer. You 4 are awesome.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah. Jack has been a dear friend of mine since I played with him back in 1980. My first year in the league, his second year in the league, and or his third year in the league actually. And he's just been a tremendous role model, tremendous mentor, and a tutoring person for me, because I watch the way he lives his life. He's just the epitome of a professional on and off the court. Has made a tremendous success for himself off the court. He's been with me through my difficult emotional and mental times, shooting me little text messages of encouragement from time to time. So I knew I can count on Jack to come on the show, and I knew it would be a great interview, and it turned out to be just that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was impressed with Jack Sikma here. He's NBA champion, Hall of Famer, and then the role he played. Some of these veterans are hard on rookies, and you wonder how many guys just fade away because the veterans were so hard on them because they thought they were going to take their jobs, but not with him. So I was very impressed, and that made a big impression with me. Now, continuing with your book, I was engaged throughout much of 2019 with my Seattle City Council campaign. Unfortunately, on August 6th, the date of the primaries, I was not elected. I was hoping to win because it would lay out my path for the next 4 years, the term for a city council person. I've always been interested in politics because it's one of the few ways you can make a lasting social and community difference. I enjoy being a voice for our community. In January 2019, I established Your Gift of Life Foundation. That's where my true love lies at the moment, in using my real-life experience to help others going through a similar situation. I'd like to travel all over the country and internationally even, speaking to students and the younger generation, including sports teams, to let them know there is a way out of the darkest places if they hang in there, reach out for help, and keep working diligently. That's where my real joy lies, in helping to change and save lives on a more personal basis. So where do I go from here? I've thought about that often. Now that I don't have any family or business here in Seattle and will likely lose my house, I really don't have much to hang on to in Seattle other than a bunch of dear friends. Seattle is still one of the most beautiful places in the world, but it's getting awfully expensive. I can't afford to stay here unless I really start putting things together again quickly. I do realize I have a lot of marketable skills, something I didn't realize when I was going through my dark period.
Yeah, Peter, I really appreciate you sharing excerpts from the book with our listening audience. I've always been very involved with the political process, not always as a candidate, but just really knowing what the issues are going on and how to, be a voice and try to make a difference out there somehow. And so I've been very, I guess just kind of privileged to be able to step up and be able to take on that pressure of being a voice for your community. It's a tough job. It's a nasty job sometimes. It doesn't have to be. But I was one of those that just wanted to come together and bring people together from across the aisles, across the various communities that I serve in Seattle. And I'll continue doing that to some extent. With the mental health piece and the foundation, we just got our, the IRS has been very slow through this COVID time. So we just got our official tax-exempt status from the federal IRS, federal level, just a couple of weeks ago for my foundation. And what I want to do with the foundation, matter of fact, I'm a keynote speaker next week in Seattle at Sound Mental Health for their big annual luncheon, is to raise money for the foundation. And monies I get paid for speaking engagements like that go into the foundation. And eventually, ultimately, we want to be a sponsor and scholarship students of color who are going into the mental health professions. We need more and more health professionals of color, and the only way to get that going is to create some pipeline. So, listening audience out there, when you're looking for a contribution that's tax deductible sometime later in the year, think about Your Gift of Life Foundation, which is my nonprofit foundation, and we will get those kids off into mental health professions, degrees, and then they go back to their communities that they come from, and they are becoming those mental health professionals that those communities so desperately need.
Continuing with your book, when I lost the Seattle City Council race, I considered just picking up and moving to China. I could then work a lot more closely with my colleagues there on study abroad programs and basketball training, featuring a lot of former NBA players. I've been on my own for the last 3 years, and now that I'm in my early 60s, I don't want to face retirement alone. I want to continue traveling the world while still physically able to do so. I want to get out there and rebuild my retirement nest egg so I can look forward to my golden years. You can ask yourself the same thing. Where do I go from here? There's no hurry, but after you get everything back in place and you're feeling healthy and like your old self again, you'll probably emerge out of the darkness with a whole new landscape of things to look at. Maybe you have experienced a lot of major changes like I did. The death of a loved one, a divorce, financial ruin, having to pick up and move to another location, health changes. There are a million things that can change your outlook on life, but you have to be prepared for it. All the years I ran the Donaldson Clinic, I used to keep a sign on my office wall that said, "Change is inevitable, but growth is optional." Every time I looked at that change, and every time I think of that quote, I remind myself that I choose to grow no matter what the change. Going through adversity will change you. It's up to you to grow with that change. You can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. All those thoughts about moving to China back in 2019 went down the drain when COVID hit and China locked down and everyone pretty much locked in place. China still is not open, as you hear about the news from Shanghai and Hong Kong, locking down tens of millions of people at a time. I think they're going about it the wrong way. They need to get vaccinations and vaccines up, but they're trying the zero tolerance policy, and we'll see if that works or not. So my thoughts of moving to China are not there right now. I do want to get back involved with the study abroad programs, which is bringing Chinese high school and college kids from China over here to the States, and they enroll in our universities and our colleges and high schools at a really astounding rate and really excellent students to do so. So I want to do that again once the COVID pandemic is finally over. Maybe next fall we can start that up again. So, but Martin Luther King Jr. had a wonderful sermon, and I'm a real student of Martin Luther King, called "Where Do We Go From Here?" And it's a great sermon. I recommend everybody to pull it up and read it. And we've come a long way, but we still have a long, long way to go, as evidenced by some of the comments earlier in our show here. We seem to be backsliding a little bit, but we've come a long way, and we still need to keep on putting our our pedal to the metal and our nose to the grindstone and pushing to be a better version of what we are yesterday that we can be today.
Sal from Germantown, Pennsylvania. Hey, James, my Phillies are in Seattle. Are you going to the games? I think he's talking about baseball games, Phillies and Mariners.
Yes, he is talking about baseball, yeah. And our poor Mariners, they start out smoking every single season. They start out the gate very, very hot, forgetting that there's 162 games in the season. And so now they're starting to tail off a little bit. No, so I won't be able to hit the game today. But, should the Phillies come back out this way, I would love to take in. We've got beautiful Safeco Field out here, a baseball stadium that's just gorgeous with the retractable roof and everything else. And on those summer days in Seattle, 75, 80 degrees, there's no better place to be. So I intend on taking in several games this summer.
Something I thought about I didn't bring up before was when Kevin Durant signed with the Warriors, and he was in, of course, OKC took the NBA from Seattle, but the team, but here OKC is a pretty small town, and he was and Durant was they had a strong contender, and he got frustrated, and then he left, but then he went on this team that was already so good. And then here he wins a couple NBA Finals with the Warriors, and he's NBA Finals. But then it's like, to me, it seemed very sad because people are like, oh, you guys were too good, and then so he left. And I thought, I wish he had stayed in OKC because those people really loved him there, and that's all they've never had a pro team. This is their first pro team.
Right, that's right, and that's the same way I feel about Giannis in Milwaukee. He stated that he's going to stay there for his career. And that's good for him, good for Milwaukee, good for the city of Milwaukee, a smaller sports market that really needs to have a competitive NBA team. And they've always had good teams, but never really great teams. Now they've got a great team, except for 50 years ago when Lou Alcindor and Oscar Robertson won their first championship in Milwaukee. But ever since then, they just haven't been able to get past the other powerhouses in the Eastern Conference. But now they are a powerhouse, and Giannis is one of the main reasons for that happening. So the smaller sports market teams need to really hang on to their players. But in turn, those players need to show loyalty to those small teams and say, hey, I'm going to stay here and build us into a contender. That's when your legacy really takes hold.
Have you made any progress about having a get-together with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
Not yet. I keep on trying to find an opportunity to reach out to him. I think I mentioned last time I was on your show that I just finished the Coach Wooden and I book with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a fantastic read that just really gives you some tremendous insight into their friendship and their relationship that they had for about 50 years. And Kareem is so, he just holds Coach Wooden in such respect and such honor, which is great to see. And this is what made Kareem great, what made Coach Wooden great, and their legacy continues to go on.
Now, there's this, I haven't seen it, but I've heard there's a drama show about the 1980s Lakers. Have you seen that? Any of these episodes?
No, it's on HBO. I haven't seen it. I'm not really interested in seeing it for some reason. I've seen some little trailer clips and things, and, they're using actors to play Magic and play Jack Nicholson and Kareem and all the rest of them, Pat Riley. And it just didn't really catch my attention as something I wanted to tune into. But I've heard some feedback now from Jerry West and I think a couple other guys, Kareem, that they don't feel they were depicted very favorably or very well in this little docu-series. And so maybe for that I'd like to check into it, because I lived through those 1980 L.A. Lakers, the Showtime Lakers. We played against them every year, a half a dozen times at least. So I was right there with those great teams, and not on the inside, but on the outside. So I'd be kind of interesting to see what it's all about.
Yeah, because you could very well be depicted, and you'd like to see how you were depicted.
That's true. I wonder who they might have playing me.
Oh boy. Now we've been talking about from time to time that your experiences with the NBA top 50 of all time, and what do you remember about playing against Shaquille O'Neal?
Yeah, I tell you, I was an old timer when Shaquille came in the league. This was 1996, I believe, and I was about 36, 37 years old, playing against Kareem. I was playing against Shaquille, who was with the Orlando Magic. And we're banging away down there, and I'm really one of the big, strong guys in the league, myself, Artis Gilmore, that can actually hold our ground against Shaquille. He's young, and he's, hyper, and he's jumping all over the place. But he didn't quite learn the game yet, so it was good to catch him early. And I remember him looking at me and saying, "Wow, man, you are so strong. How old are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm 36 years old." He said, "Wow, when I'm 36, I'm going to be chilling on the beaches of Maui." He told me right then. But he kept playing until he was almost 40. It's once it gets into you, it's something that's hard to get out of you. But yeah. I played against Shaquille. Matter of fact, I'm finishing up an ebook right now that'll be available for all of our listeners of me playing against 37 of the top 50 all-time NBA greats. And the guys I didn't play against, the Bob Cousy's, the Wilt Chamberlains, the Bill Russells, my friends, Coach Lenny Wilkins and Sat Sanders filled in for me. They filled in their experiences of playing against those guys. So it's a great little ebook. It's going to be available probably next month, and I'll make it available to all of our listeners out there.
That's something to look forward to. More writing by James Donaldson. I was thinking about Shaq, and of course, he's been on TV a lot as a commentator with these other fellows, and he and Charles Barkley have this interesting relationship, and of course, I think Charles Barkley's kind of like similar to Bill Walton. Very talk about entertainer. Not just obviously he's not playing anymore, but I just think what a personality. Do you have any thoughts on Charles Barkley?
Well, and that's why Charles is doing what he's doing. I mean, he's a great personality. Bill Walton is a great personality, and these guys, they continue doing what they do year after year, decades after their playing career is over. Charles was fantastic. Matter of fact, I wrote about playing against Charles in my soon-to-be released ebook, and I talk about Charles being one of the few guys I can count on one hand that ever actually dunked on me when I'm given my full effort to go and try to block the shot. Charles took off from the foul line, and this is when I was with the San Diego, Los Angeles Clippers, and he took off from the foul line. Over our whole team, Norm Nixon was at point guard, and he jumped around Norm easily. Derek Smith was our two guard, and he went by Derek. Michael Brooks, I believe, Terry Cummings was our three, and he jumped over at Terry, and he came at me, and he put the ball into the basket with me going at it for all I had. And he was still going up into the air from the foul line. It was an amazing thing. This is when he was with Philly, a young Charles Barkley, and it was just one of the most amazing, astonishing things I've ever experienced. And if it wasn't for the fact it was one of those most astonishing things, it would have been my most embarrassing moment in the NBA. But all of us just took our hats off to Charles, pat him on his rear end, and say, "Man, you are the man, Charles. You are the man."
Well, that's what's wonderful is that he has such a personality as well after retirement. That's why I'm always listening whenever he's talking after a game, and I'm tuning in. The time has flown by. Tonight we've had, again, Mr. James Donaldson, former NBA player and author of the book Celebrating Your Gift of Life, From the Verge of Suicide to a Life of Purpose and Joy. Do you have any final words for our audience tonight, Mr. James Donaldson?
Well, for all you listeners out there, Peter's been doing a wonderful job sharing little excerpts of the book, but there's so much more to the book. There's a lot of helpful strategic information in there to help people through difficult times. Order up the book from celebratingyourgiftoflife.com. It comes directly to me. I personally sign it for you, put a nice positive message in it, and drop it into the mail for you in a couple of days. So you can get that book at celebratingyourgiftoflife.com, and it will come directly signed from me. And I just really appreciate everybody's tremendous support, and continue making this month Mental Health Awareness Month and giving support to everybody out there that needs it.
Well, it's been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful having you on the show again, James. And you've given contact information for Craig Elo. We're trying to schedule Craig Elo for next week for this show. So I really appreciate that, and hope and that'll be wonderful to have Craig Elo on the show. We'll have James Donaldson again in 2 weeks on May 24th. Hopefully, Craig Elo next week. Sam McDowell, I'm hoping to get again sometime. Dear listener, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Good night, everybody. Thanks again, Mr. James Donaldson.
All right. Be well, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.